We'll cover personal development, the last of it here, and then we'll get into our goals workshop, putting together the next 10 years, and then we'll get into leadership. Personal development. This little topic under personal development is called acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Mr. Schoaf asked me a very keen question when I was around him in those early days, age 25. His question on this particular day was, Mr. Rohn, how do you affect other people? I said, I haven't given that much thought. He said, that's obvious. Schoaf had these neat little ways of getting a good substance conversation going, right? And of course, I was eager and willing to pick up all the ideas back in those days. And whatever he had to say, I was willing to tolerate it because I knew I had a lot of room to grow and had a lot of changes to make. But how do you affect other people? It's just a major, major question. All of us have an audience, whether it's the audience across the backyard fence or community audience or the audience of your family. If you're in sales, it's your clients. If you're in business, it's the business community. If you're speaking, it's your audience you're talking to. All of us have an audience. Here's one of the major questions. Are you doing some things unconsciously that might be turning off part of your audience? It's just a good question, because all of us want to be able to communicate and get along with and affect this wide variety of people, because we're all interchanging with people from all walks of life, all ages. And the question is, how are we coming across? And it includes a lot of things. It includes language and style and manners and mannerisms and all of the different parts of your behavior. What you don't want to do is turn off a big chunk of your audience unduly. Now, you may have certain principles or certain ways of doing things, and if that happens to turn some people off, you could really care less, which is okay as long as you know what's happening. The key is to know what's happening. What's really sad is when things are happening and you don't know, or somebody's turning off and you don't know what's wrong. That's what's really sad. Or you don't know and you don't care. Now, that's really sad. But I'm sure everybody here would care how you're coming across, how you're affecting other people. And it's just an excellent, excellent question. How do you affect other people? Let me give you just a few illustrations of behavior and how it might affect other people, just for some things to ponder. We could go through a long, long list and make this a long subject, but I'm just going to cover 3 or 4. And from these examples, you'll see where I'm going. How not to turn off part of your audience unduly. Here's the first one, bad language. And we're talking more probably during your business day or in a business work situation. Some of this could have to do social, I'm sure. Personal, social, family. But this is one, bad language. Bad language is perfectly acceptable to who? Yeah. See, people who use bad language, you got no problem, right? You cuss a little, they cuss a little, no problem, right? Trade a couple of dirty stories, you got no problem, right? No problem. However, bad language is unacceptable to who? A fair size of the population, right? Sure enough, if you're a little careless in this area, I'll tell you what, it's going to cost you some of your audience. Now, you might say, well, I'll cuss whenever I please, and whoever doesn't like it, that's too bad. That's okay. I'm not giving this a right and wrong. Okay, I'm not moralizing on this. I'm just saying, just so you know. You say, well, so my language costs me 30% of my audience. That's okay, I can tolerate that. That's okay, as long as you know. Okay, now if you don't know, see, that's what the problem is. But we all have to accept the idea that bad language, especially during the day or the business day, if you consistently use it, sure enough, it's going to turn some people off. Now, what's acceptable to everybody? Good language. See, you don't usually offend people by not cussing, right? You don't usually hear people say, how come you don't cuss, right? You don't usually hear that. So here's what. The very sophisticated, aware, knowledgeable person, I'm sure, would say, hey, during the business day, that's right. I'm just going to watch my language, right? So that I won't unduly, carve off a big chunk of my audience during my business day, because it might cost me business or whatever the reasons, right? So I'm just going to watch that part of it, right? Save my dirty jokes for the bar or something. Just put it in its rightful place, whatever. But that's one of the things that everybody needs to consider, your language and the way you talk and whether or not you might be unconsciously. Because sometimes we can pick up habits over the years that are just unconscious. We just don't know. It's just habits we've gathered up, and sure enough, they're costing us. But if you give this a little bit of thought, maybe this is something you ought to consider. The next one is smoking. Smoking is perfectly acceptable to the smokers, right? You got no problem. Guess what brand each other is smoking, right? Just blow a little smoke. So you got no problem with your audience, right? The smoking side of your audience. However, smoking, unacceptable too. A lot of the people who don't smoke. You say, well, I'll smoke if I please, and whoever likes it, fine. Whoever doesn't like it, fine. That's okay. That's all. I'm saying that's all right as long as you know, all right? As long as you're not kidding yourself that you're not losing part of your audience, right? Insisting that you'll do it, whatever the consequences are. Now, what's perfectly acceptable to everybody? See, not to smoke usually is not offensive to anybody, right? We don't usually hear, how come you don't smoke? You ought to smoke more. We don't usually hear that. So for the broad audience, see, the broad acceptance, the guy says, well, that's right. I probably should pay a little more attention to that because sure enough, I might be losing part of my audience. I might be losing part of my potential business just because I'm a little careless on this side. See, sophisticated people just want to be terribly aware, to know exactly what's going on, willing to take the consequences for whatever they wish to do if they insist on doing it, but also sophisticated enough to know what the cost is, what the percentages are. So these are just some things to watch. If you walk into somebody's office, right, and you say, where's your ashtray? How come you don't have any ashtrays? That's probably a good sign, right? No ashtrays means, probably, yeah, the guy or the lady is not a smoker. And you just say, oh, that's right. I can remember a couple of times when I just, kind of wandered in there and wasn't thinking, right? So it's another part of behavior, just so you know what might be costing you. Here's another one, being late. Now, being late is perfectly acceptable too, right? People that are late, see? No problem there. They probably aren't there when you get there anyway, right? I mean, so you got no problems being tardy. However, being late is unacceptable to some people. In fact, with some people, it is such a point of contention. If you happen to be 10 or 15 minutes late, some people won't even see you. If you've made an appointment, you show up late, they won't see you. And you say, well, that's a little too cranky, and that's a little too strict. Well, that's their code. And if you're going to interchange with a whole variety of people, and some of those people are going to be part of your audience and part of your market, you just got to understand, right, that it might be costing me. If I keep showing up late all the time, sure enough, I got to admit it's going to cost me. Now, if I'm willing to tolerate the cost, that's okay. I'm not saying it's wrong. I used to give right and wrong to a lot of things, but I gave that up. Right? I used to say, this is what's right, but I had to apologize so often for being wrong that I quit that. And now I say, this is my opinion, and here's what I think. But as long as you know that, a certain percentage of your market, sure enough, is going to cost you. If you're indulge in this behavior, then that's okay, as long as you know what it costs you. But acceptable to everybody is being on time. See, that doesn't usually offend anybody. Just a couple of more. And there's a whole long list of things we could go through, but I'll just give you a couple of more examples here. The next one is dress. In your business day and where you work and your community and where you live, you just have to look around and, see what's happening and what's going on and make sure that you're not, doing something wild and weird that's, a bit out of step. And you say, well, I'll be weird if I wish, whoever doesn't like it, let them lump it, whatever we used to say back 100 years ago, right? But that's okay. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that what you ought to be is just uniquely aware of whatever your dress and your behavior may be affecting other people, costing you part of your audience, okay? In some business areas, if you come strolling in looking like you came from the golf course, guess what? People will treat you casually because you look casual. That's true. They say, well, this person really doesn't seem to be a serious business person. And it just, by the way they're dressed. Now, maybe you are serious, but sometimes the way you dress just doesn't show that you're serious on a business day with a business appointment. And you say, well, I can see where, I've been a little careless on that. And sure enough, I wondered why some people turned a little cool and it just didn't go that well. And maybe that's it. See, I don't know. These are just things to check out. However, what's acceptable to everybody in the dress code? Right? Being well dressed on a business day. See, that doesn't usually offend anybody. Or they don't look at you a little strange or whatever. Now, some of this has to do with locality. If you live in West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach in Florida, and you come in the business day with a tie, cufflinks, and everything, you look a little funny, right? It's just the opposite there because the business dress of the day is casual in Palm Beach. So you just have to Take a look at your audience is really what it is, whatever the community you live in, and the people you're in touch with, the people you're in contact with, and just analyze your audience and say, what might I be doing or saying, or what behavior do I have that might need a little attention or correction so that I won't be wiping out this chunk of my audience. Okay, here's the last one, and we'll be finished with this. There's a lot of other examples. I'm sure you've thought of them already, but I wondered why, back in those early days, I'd go to work for a company, and sure enough, everything was fine to start with, and 2 or 3 months later, this relationship between me and my company, my employer, the office, whatever, would start to turn cool. And that used to puzzle me. And the first time or two, I said, well, they just don't like my personality, whatever, right? So we don't get along. So I'd quit. I'd go get me another job. And everything, say, Mr. Rohn, we like you, we like your attitude, looks like you're ambitious, ready to go to work. I said, yes, I am, okay, let's go. And everything started off fine. And then a month or two later, this thing had just turned cool again. And I couldn't figure out what it was until I met Mr. Schoaf, and he gave me the tips on what probably was wrong after we had some conversations. What I found out was this. I would go to work for the company, everything was fine. And a month or two later, when I thought we were, fairly well acquainted and got something going here, I would ask for an advance on my next month's salary or whatever, right? So I'm a little short of money. Can I make a little draw on next month's salary? And usually they'd say, well, okay. But sure enough, this real nice, warm relationship, good feelings we had going would just kind of start turning cool. And I didn't even know what was wrong. And that was it. That was it. And to explain that, I've come up with what I think are some pretty good phrases you might make a note of. One is, opportunity shies away from need. Opportunity shies away from need. But opportunity is attracted by talent and ability. See, what you want to do with opportunity is not turn it off. You don't want to offend opportunity. You don't want opportunity to turn cool on you. So the only thing you present to opportunity is talent and ability and performance and skill. You don't present need to opportunity. It's like asking the soil for an advance. What would happen if you'd ask the soil for an advance on next fall's crop? The soil says, look, you got to go somewhere else. Don't bring me your need. Bring me your seed. See, you got to go do your borrowing somewhere else and bring the seed to the soil. You don't borrow from the soil. You borrow somewhere else, get the seed, bring the seed to the soil. Because the soil does not want to know your need. The soil wants to know your talent, your ability to put seed in the ground. Now, you got to treat an employer and a company the same way. Don't make the employer your banker. Make the banker your banker. I found out the same thing is true with friendship. Best not to make your friend your loan company, because the two now get confused. So do you want me to be your friend or your budget finance? See, because I got to take on a whole new attitude between you and me if there's money between us, right? I got to take on a borrower, borrowee, or whatever, right? I mean, it's a whole new relationship now if there's money between us. Now, friendship between us, that's one thing. But now if money gets between us, now we got a whole different thing to try to handle, okay? So make your banker, right? Your family, your employer. Treat opportunity, only show opportunity your good side. See, when you go to work and you tell the company, look, I need this, and I need this, and I got to have this, and I need this, and I need this, employers usually say, I think we got the wrong person. Now, see, I didn't know that till I'd been through that for a couple of years, just sort of stumbling around till I found that out, okay? Best not to mix relationships. I met a neat lady about a year ago. Gosh, she was really something. I was terribly attracted. But about, I think the 4th time we went to a play or something, and then I discovered she wanted me to be her banker. I wanted to be her lover, and she wanted me to be her banker. And now I get terribly confused, right? How can I be her lover and her banker? Okay, behavior and how it works and how to survey your audience. Make sure, even whether it's family, you just treat family like family and friends like friends and bankers like bankers and lawyers like lawyers and opportunity, employers. You just partnerships. Just analyze your whole audience and all of your working social personal relationships and make sure that you've singled out the value and you concentrate on that, and then take a look at yourself and make sure. Now, to really get some help on this particular subject, here's what I found to be helpful to me. Find somebody that's close to you and that has your best interest at heart, and invite their analysis of you and your situation, how you affect other people. Just find somebody close to you. Sometimes it's a wife or a husband or a business partner or a close friend, somebody that's around you quite a bit. Say, look, you're around me quite a bit. How am I doing? My dress, my language, my behavior, the way I act, public, private, when I'm around people. Do I talk too much? Do I talk too little? Do I come on too strong? Am I too shy and timid? How about my dress, my mannerisms? You know, what's going on with me? You're close. Tell me. How am I doing? Give me some feedback. Now, I say invite somebody to analyze and give you some help on this because the biggest share of the time, even your closest friends and people very close to you sometimes won't bring up some things that seem to be a little too sensitive. So you've got to say, look, just tell me, you know, I'm opening the door here for you to just really give me some good feedback on myself, my behavior, what I'm doing. And if you'll invite it, sure enough, somebody close to you will be, right, more inclined to give you some ideas and some feedback on how you might make some improvements. Now, when you open the door now, get ready for some incredible things, because some things we just don't know we're doing. It's incredible. And some are a little painful, right? If you discover you pick your nose in public. You say, well, I can't believe that. You asked. Take my word for it. You say, well, I've been doing it how long? Say, long time. You mean even the other night when... Now, it's going to be painful, right? Some of the things that might come out in this conversation. But what a good time to finally find out some things that you just have been picking up over the years. You've just gathered up, you know, just unconsciously develop certain behaviors, do certain things that you just weren't thinking of. And now you can make the corrections. Now you can make the changes. And sure enough, your own self-confidence will start to grow once some of these things have been pointed out. But find somebody that really has your best interest at heart, because you don't want just criticism for criticism's sake. And I've done this. The people that are close to me, all of my staff, we feel perfectly free to tell each other certain things that we think will help in language and style and approach to the public and talking to people, you know, how to handle ourselves. We just very open. We got this open door policy, open conference table policy. And we have some fairly heavy sessions go on around the corporate conference room simply because we want to get better, we want to grow, we want to help each other to make sure we're not missing anything personally that we could change or do that would be better. And some things for me have been rather painful. One of my business partners a long time ago, I had a little thing in my seminar that I thought was a little clever way back in those early days. And he sat through and listened to it and listened to it and listened to it. And finally he came to me and said, hey partner, we've agreed to level with each other, right, on some things that could improve. And he said, I've got one for you. I said, wonderful. Tell me what it is. I'll correct it. In my seminar, sometimes for sort of the startle value, right, to get people's attention, you have to just kind of hit something real hard. And I had this phrase in my seminar. I was talking about people leading mediocre lives. And I said, some people lead such mediocre lives, their lives are worth less than a pitcher of warm spit. Now, I thought it was clever. I mean, I really did. He sat through that. This must have been, I don't know, at least a year and a half. And finally he comes to me and he says, I got something, and he pointed that out to me. He said, in my opinion, Jim, you got to take that out of the seminar. And then I started defending it. I said, no, here's why I do that, right? You know, some things have got to be just sort of, just read, cut, hit. He said, partner, take my word for it. It's not buying you any attention. He said, in fact, I think you're losing part of your audience. And he said, your seminar will be just as good without it. And he said, I think it's costing you by having it in there. And I just kept defending. I said, no, here's why that's in there. He said, okay. So I thought about it, I guess, for 2 or 3 days. And I'm still trying to justify in my own mind, right? No, sir, that's right. It got to have some of those strong things in it. But the more I tried to justify it and the more I went over that phrase, the more I thought, how did that ever get in there in the first place? Right? He was right. So I took it out and I put it in here. I've got it in here for a purpose. See, here we're willing to disclose some of our faults. Not all of them, but some of them. I told somebody the other day, I'm going to continually disclose to you some of my surface faults so that you'll go away being satisfied and won't look for all the others. Okay. Acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Is that helpful? See, we all just need to take a better look, a more conscious daily look. It's not difficult to live just sort of a daily unconscious life, right? Where you just kind of go through the routine, right? Guy gets up, shaves, jumps in his car, goes to work, travels the same routine, and his language and his style just gets to be sort of daily. And little things can creep in, and you let down just a little bit here and a little bit here, and the routine just keeps going. And sure enough, you just collect some things that could very well in the marketplace and in the business community and among a wide variety of people could very well be doing you more harm than good. So we've all got to just take a look. No matter how painful it is to grow, we've got to take a look where we are and see how we can improve. Okay. Here's one good teacher at the end of the day, especially your conscience. If you just ponder at the end of the day what you're doing and where you're going and what you're saying, and sometimes conscience can be one of the best teachers if you keep it alive and awake and working, functioning. If you will allow it, your conscience at the end of the day will probably do one of two things: applaud you or prod you. Conscience will either say, got to be one of the earth's noble, or it probably will say, who are you trying to kid? Right? I mean, it's gonna go one way or the other. Conscience. I told a group in Minnesota not long ago, a business group, I said, here's how you become successful. At the end of the day, make a list of all the things you did, calls you made, presentations you made, sales you made, contacts you made, conversations you had. Make a list of all that, everything you did for the day. Then make a list of everything you could have done and explain to yourself the difference. And if there's not much gap there, you're growing. But if there's a big gap there in what you did and what you could have done, now you've got to explain that to yourself. And primarily, we need to explain to ourselves our own behavior. We don't usually have to give an account to the public or display what we've done on a public bulletin board, but just so we know personally. Okay, here's the next subject under personal development, a little brief mention of a code of conduct. I found it to be helpful, whether it's in business or personal life, to develop a code. And here's another place where you can use your journal and just start toying with some ideas on how to put into language how you intend to function as a human being. If you've got a business, how you intend to function in your business. Here's what I want to be known for. Here's the reputation I want to develop. Here's the kind of service I want to render. Okay. Here's how I want to grow. I want to be known for these principles. Put together a list of the principles by which you're going to function and operate. It's not a bad idea to write it out for your business. Also write it out for your life. Things I will do, things I will not do, things I want to be known for. And one of the best illustrations of a code of conduct came in one simple sentence. And I got this from reading the story of Dr. J, Julius Erving, a basketball player, probably one of the most gifted basketball players to ever play the game professionally. He's about 27, 28 years old, been most valuable player 2 or 3 years, the last 2 or 3 years. Incredible human being. Is invited for speaking engagements all over the country. Is now a wealthy man at age 27, 28. Gifted. When Philadelphia bought him from the New York Nets, they paid $3 million to get him. And then they negotiated his salary, $3 million, which makes him the $6 million man. But he's a phenomenal young man, and he's still doing extremely well. Last year was one of his best years. Incredible. Julius Erving, they call him Dr. J for the way he operates on the basketball floor. He's something to watch. I've been by his home in Long Island in New York. They asked Dr. J, a sports writer is asking him, interviewing him. Said, what's the real secret to your phenomenal success? Everybody's wanting to know the secret to your success, right? And he put it in one sentence. He says, here's why I think I'm successful. He said, I've learned to demand more of myself than anyone else could possibly dream up. And I think that's worth making a note of. I demand more of myself than anyone else could possibly dream up. See, that's powerful. Making high demands on yourself, that's what's exciting. I'm part of a group that does business in many countries, high-powered group. And what's fascinating about belonging to a high-powered team is that the demands for you to perform personally are so out of sight that unless you do extremely well, you just have to slip away in the middle of the night and just go away. You can't be around if you don't do exceptionally well. What you want to make sure is that you belong or that you're part of a group where the demands are high. Don't go where it's easy, because you won't grow. If they don't care what time you get there, they don't care when you leave, they don't care what you do, just show up and do your best and, try your hardest. Those are just not the demands you want that'll help you to grow and to change. It's good to belong to something where the comparisons are high, the challenge is high, the competition is keen, and the interest for you to really make major changes monthly and yearly are just there. Then you will start to tap all of your resources and possibilities and capabilities. And you'll be proud, you'll be excited. But try to associate where the demands are high. How sad when John walks into the bank where he works, late for the 5th time, and the manager calls him in and says, "John, if you're late one more time, you don't work here anymore." What a sad scene. What that means is the bank manager probably has a better view of John's life than John has for himself. So put more demands on yourself than anyone else could dream up. That is a good code of conduct. Okay. The next subject under personal development is your personal development library. I've got one of the best libraries, and I'll admit I haven't read everything in it. But I feel smarter just walking in it, right? I mean, some of it you pick up by osmosis, I think, right? Just get around. But sure enough, I've done quite a bit of making up for my lack of going to college. I only went 1 year and a half, and then I quit. So I've been doing my best to make up, reading the classics and going through a lot of things that I would have gotten, I'm sure, if I'd have gone to school. But make sure that your library, first of all, is balanced. Some people are just reading the self-help books, the positive thinking books. Those are okay, but make sure that that's only a small part of your overall self-education and your library. Because remember, you can't live on mental candy. Just the feel-good stuff is just not enough. We all need to be inspired. But then we all need some instructions and some guidelines. And what do you do starting today that'll make a difference? What do you do to change your direction? But make sure your library is well balanced. Put in there the biographies and autobiographies of successful people. I've got a book in my library, I think it's hard to find now, called The First Billionaire. It's the story of Henry Ford, the first billionaire. Fascinating story. Make sure you've got plenty of history. See, the inclination is to say, well, I studied plenty of history in school, but, that's just not enough. Your view of history now is just a lot better than when you were a teenager. When you were 19, 20, 21 going to college, maybe you were a little more serious than I was about college when I went to college. But sure enough, taking a look now at some books and going through some history and human behavior of the past and how some civilizations have come and gone, a lot of that might have a lot more meaning for you now than it did back then. So just go back and review some of the things you've already known or gone through. History. Did Daniel mention the book Lessons of History? That's a good book to get. Lessons of History by Durant, Will and Ariel Durant. They wrote 11 or 12 volumes on civilization. And with your new reading skills, you can get those and go through all those. But get this book, Lessons of History. It's only 100 pages, but it's so incredibly well written. It's just a capsule view of history. It's a unique book. Lessons of History by Durant. Will and Ariel are a husband and wife writing team. I think they're in their 80s now, and they're phenomenal. Now, you've got to go through religion, and the spiritual side of your nature needs to be educated and well-fed. Philosophy, a whole series of philosophical discussions over the last 3,000 or 4,000 years. Interesting reading. What is value? What are values? What are the most important values? What is life all about? Philosophy. Then culture. Make sure you study music and the dance, the arts. Every society that develops into any kind of unique society is proud of its culture. Make sure you go to as many plays as you do ball games. Make sure you get the culture, right? Then you got to have some books on finance and money. You got to know a bit about money and inflation. And now, you don't have to particularly make it a study, unless you wish to, specialize in it. There are some things you need at least a fundamental awareness of. And one is money, the economic system. Another is bookkeeping. You need to be able to read financial statements, know what assets and liabilities are, and debits and credits. And, everybody needs just a bit of fundamental on bookkeeping and how most records are kept. You also need some fundamentals on law, because legalities these days and being involved in lawsuits and disputes and so on is, fairly common now, right? To find yourself, right, embroiled in some controversy where you've got to know a little bit about what's going on. Don't just always, hope somebody else will come up with the information that you might need. Just learn a little bit about it yourself, okay? You don't have to make it a lifetime study, but just so you have some good fundamentals on law, bookkeeping, money, commerce, what's happening in the world. Then you got to have some novels and some fun reading, interesting reading. Make sure you've got poetry, just a well-rounded library, a whole variety, right? You need some mental protein, carbohydrates and enzymes, and vitamins and minerals, right? You got to have it all. Well-rounded personal self-education and the self-help books that deal with human behavior and success. And remember, from your personal development library, become a student, not a follower. A student. Be independent. I understand the team concept, and we do have to work together. But I'm a great believer in being as independent as you possibly can, because that's where the real strength lies in the team effort, is independent, individual application of all the learning and all the skills you can possibly accumulate, the knowledge and awareness that you can possibly accumulate, relying more and more on your own self and your own education and your own awareness rather than relying on other people. Okay, personal development library. In my opinion, it's so important. One of the things you ought to be proud of as the years go by is your library. There are 3 important things you want to leave behind when your earthly journey has finished. 3 important things to leave behind. 1 is your pictures. Take a lot of pictures. Record all the events. It's one of the 20th century phenomenons, being able to capture the event. See, a couple hundred years ago, there was no chance unless somebody could draw or paint or, try to draw some kind of likeness of the scene or the person or what was going on. There was just no pictures, right? When did pictures come? 1860, something like that, around the Civil War period, and especially for the last 100 years. I mean, all of us are fascinated by old pictures. Do you ever go through the old albums, right? Grandmother and great-grandmother and what you wish was there was a lot more pictures, right, of where they lived and what they did and who they were with and what they saw and what the scenes were. And, there's just a few pictures. So make sure one of the legacies you leave behind are all these pictures that have recorded your life and where you went and what you did and who you were with and so on, right? All of the pictures. Leave behind a good set of pictures. The next thing you leave behind is your library. Leave behind this wealth of information that you've gathered up, that you've personally selected, that you've touched and you've read, and it's molded and shaped and helped to design your life. It'll be a major legacy to leave behind. Your library. It's a treasure. And third is your journals. Can you imagine how valuable those journals will be if you keep them now the rest of your life? All of your ideas and thoughts and notes, things you've gathered up over the years, that might be a whole library in itself. Mine now is quite a growing library of journals I've kept over the last 20-some years. Incredible. I was in my motorhome not long ago up in Oakland. I did a seminar one evening, and somebody broke into my motorhome. And they took cameras and tape recorders and leather briefcases, and a whole lot of stuff, which I didn't mind. You could really care less, right, about the things. But they took one briefcase that had in it some of my journals that I didn't have any copies of. Treasures. No telling what I would give to get those back. But that's how important your journals will become if you'll keep them and just go back through them. But you can imagine, see, the legacy you leave behind when people can go back, right? Children, grandchildren, whatever, can go back And just there's your life. There's your thoughts, right? There you are on the pages of these journals, and where you went and what you thought was good to make note of, and the goals that you've had and the things you've checked off and what you've accomplished. Great legacy to leave behind. Your journals, your library, and your pictures. So just do that consciously, because we all consciously want to leave some things behind that have meaning to other people. Okay? Your personal development library. Now, library also is something you just got to select personally. You know, we could make a list of all the books, but there's a book by Adler. If you want to get a list of the classics, Adler. A book called How to Read a Book. How to Read a Book by Adler. And in it, he's got a list of what he thinks are the 100 most important books ever written. Use that as a start. But then you've just got to go to the library. You've just got to go to the bookstore. You know, a library is something that's personal. Because one book that I've got that I think is really great, you might go through it and say, I think the guy's crazy, which is okay, right? Because sure enough, one you think is really great, I think the guy's off his rocker. But because, you know, different books and different styles and different ways of putting things is going to appeal to different people. So a library is something personal, something you select, something you go through the books, look to see things that appeal to you. Okay. Now, let's cover a little subject under personal development before we take our first morning break, called How to Become Financially Independent. Exciting subject. First of all, Mr. Shove told me when I was 25 and first met him, he said, Mr. Rohn, in my personal opinion, financial independence is a worthy goal. Now, he really said that for a reason, because a lot of people are having problems with financial independence simply because they have some moral issues really confused in their minds about the value of money, or the danger of money, or having too much money, or that the true values of life are not wrapped up in money, so money really doesn't matter that much. And some people have some problems in this area, and I'll admit I had some. When I first started making more money in 1 month than my father made in 1 year, at first I was very disturbed by that. And guess what? For a long time, I wouldn't even tell my parents. I didn't tell them. I said, what are they going to think? I make more money in 1 month than my father makes in 1 year. How can I tell them? And I was really confused about that. I was really bothered by that for quite a while. I think it was several months. No, because here's when it ended. I finally worked up the courage to tell him how I was doing. I can't remember now just how I put it. I was just trying to figure out some way to put it right, to break the news to him so it, wouldn't be, too great a shock. When I told them what I was doing and what was happening and what was going on, they were just incredibly delighted. They were terribly happy, terribly excited. And I discovered that I'd worried and been bothered all those months for nothing. Because I had this in my mind. How am I going to justify it? How am I going to, work this whole thing out? How are they going to feel? And sure enough, I had just conjured all this stuff up in my mind, and it really was not real. But some people really have some problems on financial independence because they feel that the morality of earning lots of money is a very valid question. Every once in a while, someone after my seminar says, I think you talk too much about money, success. And that's not where the good life is. The good life is not just money and success and making a lot of money and doing well financially. And I understand that. I really do. And I have pondered those subjects all these years. And I don't want it to make it seem like just going for money or financial success is where the true values are. They are not. And hopefully in my seminar, I've got enough in there to try not to mislead people that I'm just thinking of financial success. But, so Mr. Shove said to me, in my opinion, financial independence is a worthwhile objective. He said, here's why. He said, Jim, once you get money out of the way, you can't believe the other dimensions of your life you can work on. Once you solve the money problem, he said, now you'll have the time, more time, to work on certain other projects of your life that will really start to grow and expand. So he said, for that reason, I think financial independence is a worthwhile objective. And I know part of it's a moral question. There is a Bible phrase that says, the love of money is the root of all evil. But I'm sure the phrase is probably more correct in saying the love of money, the love of money. Now, when I did start getting some of those big bonus checks way back in those early days, my first crack at money, right? I wasn't too worried about, whether or not it was going to ruin me. One of my friends, right, his wealthy friend, when he started making a lot of big money, said, Robert, I don't know if I should give you all this big money or not. I said, money's ruined a lot of people. And Robert said, just try me one time. I mean, let's just see.